What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Ecommerce Influence Podcast. My name is Austin Bronner, and I am fired up to bring in this episode today with my friend, Andrew Drish. Andrew and I have spent countless hours talking about business and life and relationships, and I'm excited to bring him on the show. He is a very talented entrepreneur. He's built multiple companies, including the Foundation, which you guys might have seen. The Foundation was an accelerator for developers who wanted to build product companies or build software companies. Became incredibly successful. He actually launched it while he was at Burning Man, completely off the grid, and it was a 7-figure launch. And he did it completely automated. It was a hilarious, crazy story. Amongst other really interesting stories, he is an excellent marketer. And today on this episode, we talk a lot about relationships. We talk about marketing, specifically video sales letters, something that he has done. He's scaled multiple companies to 7 figures using paid traffic and video sales letters and studied them extensively. So he's got some really good advice in here. It's a great episode. I think you're going to get a lot out of it. So without any further ado, let's bring in Andrew to the show. Andy, welcome to the show, man. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thanks, brother. I'm stoked to be here.
So I wanted to bring you on this show because I've learned so much from you about business, about life, about relationships. I'm super grateful for your friendship. And one of the things that I appreciate most about you is your ability to bounce kind of seamlessly between the world of business to more maybe spirituality or the realm of relationships and life philosophy. We've had lots of conversations, and I hope that we can do that today. So I'm excited.
Me too, man.
First, I want to tell you something because they have not told you yet. So you told me about the Artist Way, and I think like last quarter you were doing it for like 12 weeks.
12 weeks. Yep.
And you were telling me about it, and I was like, you know what? You kept talking about how much of an impact it had on you. And so I started about 4 weeks ago. I'm 4 weeks into it. It's been epic. And for those of you who don't know what the Artist Way is, it's a 12-week journaling practice. So I started it, and then everyone on my team has started it as well.
Damn.
So there's a ripple effect, man. You're having a ripple effect already on people of my team. It's been awesome. I've been learning a bunch from that.
It's amazing. It's amazing. For those of you who haven't heard of it, it's written by Julia Cameron. And if you look at a lot of, the whole concept of morning pages, of writing 2 to 3 crappy pages every morning, all came from this book. And it's a really, it's a way to recover your creative spirit, for lack of a better word. And I think when you get in business and like you spend a lot of time on the business and then it gets really frustrating or just like crunchy and you get burnt out and tired, this kind of reinvigorates you and gets you back into like business as play, which is how it's designed to be. Yeah.
I think so too. It's very interesting because as you progress, right, from starting a business to running a business to managing, it's like a lot of different skill sets. And sometimes early on, it can feel more playful because it's like, oh, I'm experimenting here. There's like no downside. And then it can change and evolve. So after going through it, was there anything that you have changed or implemented in your life to make business more playful?
Yeah, I mean the two things that really stand out is that it focuses on morning pages. So I do morning pages every day. Minus I've pretty much done it every day for 4 months now, minus the past 2 weeks of having COVID. And then it also talks about the artist dates. And the artist dates is such a great concept, but it's basically once a week you go off and you go do something purely for the sake of doing the thing. So no agenda, go play, like go wander into a vintage store and look at the cool things, or take yourself to a new restaurant, or go check out a movie, like just something for you to connect with you. And both of those things. So one of the things, you've been in California and you've done lobster diving, and that was one of the things that I took myself on a date. I found some dude to teach me how to go lobster diving and spearfishing, and I started doing that every week. And so things like that really rejuvenate your own sense of creativity and getting out of all the mundane things that you have to do and just having some play. And doing that once a week is just really, really helpful.
That's good, man. Was that the lobster diving? I love it. That's one of the things I miss the most about being in Texas versus California, living by the water. I love going out at night. It's like one of the more interesting, freeing experiences when you dive in that like cold Pacific Ocean in the dark, fully alone. And then you go and dive down and like are hunting through rocks looking for lobsters. It is a wild experience, and it puts a lot of things in perspective. You're like very small, right? And very, very vulnerable when you're out there, and you're not
the top of the food chain.
You're
That's
not the top
scary.
of the food chain. You're not the alpha when you're although, we do a pretty good job of, humans can be very formidable when you're out and you've got, all you've got is a light and a knife and you're diving around. But one of the things I want to talk to you about is, so we had a little writing group that we were kicking off, I guess it was maybe 6 months ago, where we were publishing something once a week. Yeah. And I loved your newsletter because you would get once a week some little tiny messages to kind of keep. There was one message every single week, and I went back through that because there's a few that I shared, and one of them that had a really big impact on me, which was your email about heartbreak being the best medicine. And I would love, well, first of all, why is heartbreak the best medicine? And, the reason why it impacted me, I'll just say, is because it talked a little bit about being out of alignment, out of flow. So I don't know if you remember what you wrote in that email, but it was very interesting. What do you think about why is heartbreak the best medicine, and how can we relate that to what we're doing in our lives outside of just our relationship?
Yeah. So, we'll tie this back into business and make the bridge. But I think the heartbreak as medicine, heartbreak for me, there's something that is so beautiful and painful around loss and grief. And I think when your heart gets broken, whether that's through a business failure or whether that's through a relationship failure, if you've went through it, through the devastation of it, there's like it's painful, but there's also a sweetness to life. Like music sounds different, food tastes different, and you go through a phase where it's like it all feels meaningless, but then you go through a phase where like, a phrase in a song can like bring you to tears. And for me, that cracks something open in me around what I care about at different levels. And I think for guys, for men in particular, like if I'm working with men in a relationship coaching context, heartbreak is one of the ways it's an access point to getting them to truly find what matters to them in their life, and not just like the dollars and cents and the numbers and the growth and the hacking and all the things, but like what is the thing behind all of that actually drives them and that actually gets them out of bed, that they want to do, not aside from just making money and doing the things, but like what are the things that they care about in the world. And that's why I think heartbreak cracks that open in people, and that's why it's beautiful medicine.
And one of the quotes that you had in your email was, when we find ourselves out of alignment and out of flow, one question that we ask each other, and we talk about you and your partner Libby, is, if we broke up tomorrow, what would we do differently? And I thought that is such a powerful question for your relationship and also for your life. You can ask that same question with your business. The thing that was interesting when I think about that question, and it was powerful to me because I was like, okay, if I broke up, my wife and I broke up, we both went through this question together, and we came up with ideas about how we would change. And then the idea, at least behind the email, that I thought was so powerful, was just do that now. Whatever you would commit to if you guys broke up, if you do it now, that's a very powerful process.
It's so easy with business or with a relationship to be like, oh, I'll do this later, and then we don't go after the things that actually excite us. And and turn us on at some level. And we don't do that because of the relationship or because of the business. It just won't work that way. But then when you ask the question of like, well, if everything were to change, if we were to break up, what would I do differently? And then that usually is an access point to something that really excites you. And then how do you bring that into reality now, not having to wait? And in relationship in particular, I think we start off really independent, and there's something attractive about that. And then over months or years, you're in relationship and you kind of lose that independence a little bit, and you merge together. And I think that's a really healthy thing in a lot of ways. But then it's also really nice to reconnect to that part of ourselves that's like single and independent. And this question unlocks that. And then if you bring that into the relationship, it can bring in a new level of just zest and excitement.
I think it's interesting because I immediately frame that also in terms of like merging with your business. And I think it's interesting as you build a business and you continue and you like latch your identity and bring it into the business. It's interesting to me to think about that same question. If you sold your business tomorrow, or if it went bankrupt or whatever, what would you do differently?
Yep.
Because that same merging, like it somewhat takes away, I don't know, maybe the words are different, but independence as well, where it's like you can get in the momentum of what you're doing. And I know from your experience, you have gone through the process of building a successful business and then also disassociating from it, breaking away from it and recreating yourself. So I'd love to hear the story. I mean, you built the foundation, which I talked about a little bit in the intro of this podcast. And it was a big success. I mean, it was a very successful business.
Yeah.
What were you feeling? When did you know that it was going to be very successful? And what was that moment when you were like, "Oh shit, I built something this is what I wanted to build, and it's going really well."
Yeah, I mean, it was really a trip, because when we launched the foundation, my business partner at the time, and we went to Burning Man, and we had an email list of 200 people. Like we were starting real from scratch. And we happened to schedule a bunch of promotions because we're young and idiots and didn't know what we were doing. And we scheduled the promotions while we would be at Burning Man. Burning Man, you have no access to cell phone or internet or any of that. So we go to the burn, and we had a handful of interviews and podcast interviews and stuff went live while we were away. And we ended up coming back to one of the videos we wrote had went, semi-viral when you could go viral on Facebook. I don't know, 10,000 shares or something like that. But for an email list of 200 people, that's a lot for us. And we came back and we had built an email list of, I don't know, 10,000 people or something like that. And then the first launch we did a little over $1 million in revenue. And we were thinking it would do maybe like $100,000 in revenue. And so that was kind of like the kickoff for it. And then it was just riding the whirlwind of chaos after that for the next few years.
How many years did you actually, from the beginning when you guys launched to kind of wrapping up your involvement with the foundation, how long did it last?
I think that was 5 years or so. 5 or 6 years.
So
yeah.
5 years. So, I mean, it's a significant ride of, and kicking off with like it's hilarious thinking about scheduling something, being at Burning Man and coming back and having things go viral, especially back then, because videos could legit go viral without paid ads, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I would love to hear a little bit more about kind of your transformation, because, you went through this time of creating this business, being very excited about it. You run it for 5 years, and then if you go to your website now, it talks about how you have gone dark online, and you're no longer participating in the same kind of world that you were participating in before. What happened along your journey that kind of changed your view? So
I think this happens a lot with entrepreneurs, but for me, what happened was like I was just running at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Like when you start a business and you have no money, everything's driven by fear for the most part. like your fear of not being able to make payroll, fear of getting a product market to fit and then being able to scale. And so you're constantly in reaction mode and working, just 80 to 100 hours a week, just crushing life and going from event to event. I was probably on the road half the year, going from different masterminds and parties and events and speaking things and all of that. And I ended up coming home before Christmas and I got really sick. And then after 3 days of being sick, I drove to urgent care and they checked my lungs. They had the stethoscope. They're like, take a deep breath in. I took a deep breath in and my eyes rolled back in my head and I passed out and I started vomiting on myself. And and I woke up and I was just like in a complete daze and very, very confused because at that point I had never had any sort of health crisis or scare in my life. And that was a really big one. And I remembered trying to set my goals for that year of like looking into the future. And I felt empty on the inside. Like I felt like I had no fire, nothing left. Like I didn't want to do anything. I was just so burnt out and exhausted. And I ended up finding this book called Nature and the Human Soul. And it just totally changed my life. And I ended up going, finding this teacher in Bali. I did 2 phone calls with him. He was a total wizard. And so I put my life on hold and flew to Bali and spent 2 months working with him every day. And that was like the beginning of the unraveling. And when I came back, everything was kind of different. And
how old were you?
I was 29 at the time, I think, somewhere around there, 29, 30.
So you wrapped this, you kind of had this abrupt end. How did you, and you went to Bali. When you said it's the unraveling, you started to like go to the next level, what were the things that you were working on, that you were learning? And what were some of the biggest takeaways that you had from stepping back away from the business?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of the work was like breath work and body work, and then his background's in tantra, so we were just doing a lot of weird woo-woo spiritual shit, and it was great. It just really, Dan Sullivan had always asked me that question of like, Dan Sullivan's had a vision for his life for 25 years. And he would always ask the question of like 25 years out, what do you want to be doing? And I was like, man, when I zoom out 25 years, I don't want to be doing any of this. And that's a really scary, question to sit with and to wonder of like, man, yeah. So anyway, long story short, we came back and my business partner and I both wanted to transition. We tried transitioning out and letting the team run the business. They ended up getting us into a lawsuit with the Cosmo Hotel in Vegas. Like it was a crazy period, and business started losing money. And so then we ended up having to go back into the business and do some things to tweak it. And then I eventually ended up selling my equity in the business back to my partner, and we transitioned and parted ways, which was good all the way around. But it was, after that or somewhere during that period, I spent a year asking myself one question. And the question was, if I could only build one business for the rest of my life and I can't sell it and I can't retire and I can't quit working, what does that business look like? And I think that's a really powerful question for any entrepreneur to sit with, because our nature is to be like, if this, then that, when the business gets here, then we will do this. And it forces you to not put things off into the future and to build them now as you want them, which has been a great way of looking at business differently. And, for me, a big part of that is like, I don't want to be working 100-hour work weeks anymore. I think if we focus on 35 hours of focused work, we can get a good amount of stuff done. It's necessary. So, yeah.
I think it's a very powerful question. And I got that question, I got an email from you talking about this, and I highlighted it because I was like, this is a question that not many people are talking about.
Yeah.
It's a question where, and I think there's actually a lot of pushback on that question, because there's kind of 2 camps. There's like the people that are like, build something you could focus on forever. And then there's the other camp of build it to sell, right? Yeah. Build it for 4 years, do something, sell, and then go live your life in a different way.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting if you are in the camp of build something and sell it, like ask yourself, like, what happens if it doesn't work out the way that you expect, right? Because for the most part, life doesn't go the way that you expect?
What happens if you can't sell it or don't sell it?
What happens if you can't sell it? And you're taking this time and you're using your most valuable resource, your time, towards something that you don't like to do. And you don't want to do. So when you came back and you asked yourself this question for an entire year, how did that impact the way that you started your next business?
Yeah. Because Libby and I took a year off and went to summer in Europe and traveled a bunch and really spent a lot of time sitting with this of like, what's different? And there are like things, there are principles that came up that were really important to me. And first thing is like, I only want to work with people that I could work with forever. The cost of like having a bad partnership is so significant because it's not just like the partnership going sideways. It's like the years and time and all of that. Like the biggest returns always happen. Like it's compounded over time and relationships I think are huge on that. So one is like, I only work with people that I can see myself working with forever. Especially when it comes to partnerships. That was one. I don't want to be working 60 to 80 to 100 hours a week. I want to be working like steady and consistently at like 30 to 40 hours a week. And sometimes it might spike and all of the things. But then I think there's also figuring out your nature as an entrepreneur. Like what is your nature? And I'm like, I'm not necessarily a good operator for me, in the business. And so I work really well on like projects that are, 1 to 3 years of like building something, getting off the ground and then getting out and being able to build a business where we're able to do that.
When you say you're not a good that good of an operator and you talk about the nature, what do you see like the nature of other entrepreneurs? What do you mean by a good operator?
Well, I think there tends to be us farther on like the creative marketing sales driving side. There's like growth and then there's systems, right? And so you've got the growth phase of getting a business, say from 0 to like 1 to 3 million, somewhere in that space. And getting, that expansion and go time is a different skill set than when you get to like 1 to 3 million, and growing that steadily at like 20% a year to 5 million or 10, like it's a different skill set to be able to do that. And then once you're at a couple million a year, it's like, all right, now you're systematizing a bunch of things. And then someone needs to be consistently following up with those and making sure that things are getting done. And that level of consistency, I've just never been really good at. I can do it, but it's just not my nature. Does that make sense?
And if it's not your nature, it's always, I've been thinking about this a lot recently, like trying to really evaluate the things that I'm doing, because if I don't feel like juiced up, I know somebody else can do it better than I can.
Totally.
And it's almost unfair to my business if I'm not excited about the tasks that I'm doing. Or it's not even, some tasks aren't exciting, but it's like if I'm consistently feeling down about certain things, or I just, avoiding it, I know that's a red flag for, I need to find somebody else to help me do this, because somebody else, this could be a dream job for them.
Completely. And they love it, it's their nature and their skill set. I think entrepreneurs, I think it's critical for us to know where are we on that spectrum? Like where do we fall and what's our core skill set? And then building our business and life around that is important.
So you ask this question, you find these principles, and then how did you actually go from those principles to starting The Art of Love? We got
the name came through that summer, like the idea of The Art of Love, but we didn't really know what it was going to transition out to be. But I think you have to start with looking at like what are problems that you care about, because ultimately that's what we're doing with business. We're solving problems, and the two problems that I came up for me is one, this notion of like a lot of people in our generation are studying marketing and they're not spending time honing their craft, and so you have what ends up happening is you have like really talented marketers spreading all of the messages, but then you have these like incredible wisdom keepers that have been working in a field for 20 or 30 years, that have a body of knowledge that gets very, very little exposure. So that was one problem that we really cared about. And then relationships is something that Libby and I have just cared about forever, because it's been a challenging ride for us being together. And it's been such a part of our journey and challenge in life has been this. And so, so what happened was I just had a couple friends reach out and want some support with some marketing. So I started helping them, and we were helped a guy go from, he was making like $3,000 a month, and we scaled that from $3,000 up to a little over 100. And that was through building a new VSL and then putting some paid traffic on top of it and doing some general marketing things. So it took about a year. We scaled it to that, and then he referred us to somebody else, and then we took them, and we launched a new product with them, and they went from 0 to $200,000 a month with these paid traffic systems. And so it just kind of spiraled from there, and we just kind of kept doing the things that were fun to do, and just kept building it out. And so that's kind of how it evolved. Very, very, very organic. It wasn't like a master plan.
Which is, I mean, typically the way that it happens, right? You've got some kind of, it's like the action creates motion, in the sense where you're like, I got to take some action somewhere. And then eventually it comes around to something that is related to maybe your initial vision.
Totally.
So I know you, one of the things you talked about with me in the past was that one area of weakness that you felt like you had as a business owner at the foundation, and that you wanted to shore up, was this ability to drive cold traffic.
Yeah.
And, I think you are one of the best, you are the best person that I know at creating compelling video sales letters. You're a great copywriter, and you've been able to transition that into very successful video sales letters. What have you learned about first creating video sales letters?
Yeah.
And then also creating ones that are able to convert with cold traffic, because cold paid traffic is a different beast in a sense. What are some of the things that you've taken away during this education process, and you've been able to replicate it multiple times with multiple businesses at different niches?
Yeah. So if you're listening, we've scaled 1, 2, 3 companies with, building these like high converting VSL type videos, or commercials for in some situations. Most have been info products or coaching, but we've also done it with a software product as well. I think if most of your audience is e-commerce, I think it's actually easier to sell e-commerce than it is digital products like info products and coaching.
It's because it's a physical, tangible product.
Completely.
People can see it and they're like, oh.
See it, touch it, play with, there's so much that gets communicated in seeing a physical thing. When you don't have something that you can see, it becomes way more amorphous and I think way more difficult in many ways. I think this stuff is super fascinating, because here's the deal, is like when you get into business, you can go so far with organic traffic and joint ventures and partnerships. And this is the thing that we ran into with Foundation is like, I would spend half my year going to events. We'd recruit a bunch of affiliates. We'd do a bunch of interviews. We would build launches around that. It worked great. We made a bunch of money, had a huge impact with it. It was fantastic, but we were always limited at some level. And paid traffic is interesting because if you can get if you can get the systems working, you can go so much faster. The challenge is it's really, really hard to do. It's really difficult to do. And like I said, a handful of these businesses we've scaled over 7 figures, from info products to coaching to software. Things that stand out to me for these types of videos, the core thing is the offer. The offer is like the first thing. And so, and the offer being not just like the offer, there's 2 components to it. It's like the product needs to be unique and special and different. And there needs to be something that has like if you want cold traffic to be working for the stuff that I've done, there needs to be like an impulsive factor to it of like, I want this and I want it now. So there has to be an emotional hook and must hit on a emotional pain point that someone has that is important to them.
When you say that's like, just goes straight back to TV infomercials. Almost every single product that they sell has some emotional, impulsive thing. You're like, you know what? I probably should get that now.
Oh yeah, completely, absolutely. I think studying infomercials is the best. Michael Masterson is the dude behind like Proactive and all of this. And I listened to him speak at one point, and he was talking about filming infomercials and like, what is the one thing that makes an infomercial work? And what he said is that there's always a point in an infomercial where there's like an holy shit moment. And you'll see this with, when they have like the tire flex thing and they paint it over the guy's hand and then they drive a truck over the guy's hand. Like that's like the holy shit, oh my God moment.
Yep.
Or with like the knives where they like cut an aluminum can with a knife and then slice through a tomato. Like it's like those types of little moments are like, it communicates something. And
they're also memeable. There's the one with that tape, and they have this like water shooting out of a jug, which almost everyone's seen this thing, and this guy's slapping the tape on it. Yeah. And it plugs it up. Right. And that was such a powerful holy shit moment that it's been memed all over Twitter about, like plugging a hole in something ridiculous.
Yes. It's those types of things are so interesting. Of like, and that's a moment where like the whole message and value proposition and offer gets communicated in that instant. And so when you're looking at, if you've got a physical product, those are the types of things that you want to be leaning towards as you're communicating with it. Now, I think it's also really interesting. I've studied Harmon Brothers stuff a lot. Do you follow their stuff at all? You get into their world?
For sure. It's one of those things that you can't not see if you're in a physical product market selling, online. They were some of the pioneers of these long form video sales letters for products. If anyone doesn't know Harmon Brothers, I think one of their first big hits was like Dollar Shave Club. I think they did the Dollar Shave Club. No, actually, I don't think they did Dollar Shave Club.
They didn't do Dollar Shave Club.
They did Squatty Potty, right?
And Squatty
Potty.
Yep, exactly. Purple Mattress.
Purple Mattress, yes.
So what's really interesting, when I got my start with copywriting, I went to ClickBank back in the day. And I found the top converting offer in health, in BizOp, and in relationships. And I had the VSLs transcribed, and then I printed them out, and then I dissected the VSLs line by line for each of the top offers in each niche. And when I did that, it became very, very fascinating, because you can start seeing through the matrix. You start seeing like, oh, why did they use this sentence and this question and this storyline? And then you'll see patterns emerge between the three of them. So I did the same thing with Harmon Brothers, where I took their top 3 converting videos and I had them transcribed. And then I looked at the video and I looked at the audio and I looked at video, audio, and text, if there's text on screen. And it became super fascinating because they follow pretty much the exact same blueprint. Same formula every single time. And first 15 seconds, there's something there's shock and awe in the first 5 seconds. It's like a unicorn pooping rainbow ice cream, like in the first 3 seconds. And then within the first 15 seconds, they introduce the problem. And then, they've got it really dialed in. And then the genius with them and what makes their whole system work is that they're just experts at using humor for sales. So when you look at a typical infomercial, and you hear the question of like, oh, do you struggle with sleeping at night? There's an immediate sense of like guard that goes up of like, I'm getting sold to. And so what Harmon Brothers does is that anytime that they would do a typical, like, do you struggle with sleeping at night? They will follow it, or they will insert humor right before or right after. So that when you feel the guard go up, the humor brings the guard back down. And that's why these things are so fascinating to watch. And why people share them when they're commercials. Like, they get so much free publicity because of it.
It's incredible. It's very interesting because you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Right. You can't I felt that way after going to StoryBrand conference. Did you ever go to StoryBrand?
No.
It's with Donald Miller. There's a book about
Donald Miller. That's right. I've just been listening to. He wrote 1,000,000 Miles in 1,000 Years, or is that right?
Yes, he's written a couple books, and he's also written the book StoryBrand, which basically what he talks about is how the whole idea is how to tell better stories, right? And it's a structure and a format that it's used, and it's basically the hero's journey. Mm-hmm. And going there and spending 2 days dissecting this, and the way that he teaches it is actually through a lot of movies, by breaking down how most Hollywood movies, they follow the exact same format.
Yeah.
And it's the hero's journey, and it
Yeah.
starts, and there's some problem, and then they meet a guide, and then it goes through this whole thing. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Mm-hmm. But because, and then every time I'm watching a movie now, it's like, okay, I know what's coming, right? Like, it's going to find someone who's going to help him get through the struggle that he's got. And then there's going to be a turning point. And at that turning point, it's going to feel like everything is lost, and he's going to have to choose between like failure or push through to success. Right. And it's the same thing. And it's interesting to look at that and the way that you're comparing it with copy, that you can do the exact same thing. And that I think copywriting is probably the most powerful tool that you have to sell anything but physical products. Like a great question from Pep. Do you know Pep Laya?
No.
He runs Conversion XL, and he tweeted something a couple years ago. He's like, if you only could choose between text on a website or beautiful branded images to sell a product, what would you choose? The most obvious thing in the world is you got to choose text.
All day.
Right? You got to choose text. And it's interesting to break it down into that format there. So when you're creating a video sales letter now, how are you thinking about this with this formula now that you've seen through the matrix, and you're like, what's some of the practical things people can take away?
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing is just what you said, is that people think of video as like, a lot of mistakes people make when they get into video is they think that video is pretty video, supported by text. And it's the other way around. It's actually, the best video is text that is dialed in and scripted to a T, and then it's supported by imagery.
Sure.
And I think getting that right is the most important piece. You know, I'm a huge believer that I believe writing is the basis of all wealth, because it's writing is the foundation of good crystal thinking. It's the foundation of stories. Everything that's happening in Hollywood with the movies, it started as a script. You know, like writing is such the basis of it. Thinking about these videos now, it depends on the product piece, because you know, when we scripted Proof stuff, Proof is a software as a service company, and they scaled from 0 to $100,000 a month in about nine months or so. And we did that with shooting a 3-minute video, like a 3-minute video that we just ran traffic to all day. And so a 3-minute video like that, because we have something that we can show the software, and we can show it popping up. So then you don't need nearly as much time to go into scripting and all the pieces with it. But I think the most important piece is scripts. And the way that you get a script that is incredibly dialed in. So if you're doing this and you want to build this on your own, the way that we did our first video that went viral, I probably spent 100 hours scripting a 10-minute video. And what I would do is, our target demographic was like a 26-year-old developer working at a co-working space that wanted to build a business. That's our avatar. And so what I would do is I would scripted the video, and then I would go to random co-working places, and I would find random people working, and I would tap them on the shoulder and be like, hey, can I borrow you for like 15 minutes? I just want to read a script to you. And so what I would do is I would have the guy sit there, and my business partner would be on Skype, and he would read the script out loud, and I would sit off to the side, and then I would watch the person's body language. And you can watch when you read a script to somebody, you can watch when they're engaged and intrigued, and you can watch when they start tuning out. You can see it immediately. They'll be tense and on the edge of their seat, and then something will happen in the script where you'll lose them. You lose the thread. And when you lose the thread, then they look away, or they start fidgeting or something else. And so then you mark that down in the script, and then you go change it. And so if you do this enough times, you will have a script where there's no place where someone can look away. If you read through the Harmon Brothers scripts, there's no place every single word has a purpose in the script. And you can't look away. It's like, because anytime before they close a loop from the thing that they just opened, they open another one so that you're on to the next thing. So that's the most effective way that I've found to be able to create scripts that are so dialed in and compelling that makes people want to just continue watching them all the way through.
That's some really great advice. So you said 100 hours for a 10-minute video, and that's the amount of work that you put in. And this is the one that went viral. This is the one that went viral when you were in Burning Man?
Yeah.
How do you work with a team on this? Because I feel like that's an interesting transition that, a lot of people listening have some level of team. How do you prepare? Are you still doing all of this yourself? Are you completely hands-on for these things? Are you writing a brief? What does it look like at this point as the fact that you've done this a few times?
Yeah. So at this point, everything starts with a creative brief. Our creative briefs are 20 pages-ish. And the creative brief basically goes over like, all right, what's the problem that you're solving? What's the pain, internally and externally? What's the problem they say that they have? What's the problem they're actually feeling internally? What's the promise that they want? What's their dream scenario? What's it look like on the outside? What's it look like in the inside? How do they feel about it? What's the unique mechanism that makes the product actually work? So what makes this product special and different from everything else? And we go through all of these questions. Then we get into audience verticals. Who are the different verticals that you're selling to? Because you likely have somewhere between 2 and 3, maybe 5. But we tend to stick to like 2 to 3 different verticals because you might have older people and you might have younger people and you might have different use cases for whatever the problem is. So we map those out, and then we go into each one of those, fears, frustrations, desires, dreams, hopes. And once you get all of this mapped out, it's a very, very great way to keep everybody on your team on the same page with what the core messaging for marketing is. And then at that point, scripting becomes much easier because you've already went through all of the psychographic aspects of it. Like, you understand the desires of the market at a deep level and the objections and the fears and the hesitations. And so for me, I fill out the creative brief and I spend a lot of time on that piece. And then I've been using a copywriter for the longer form VSLs. It's very, very difficult to hire good copywriters, has been my experience. It's been very difficult to hire good copywriters. And then I think you need to have some level of foundational understanding of copy to be able to do it and to do it well. And then I usually use them to get the first long form draft built, and then I go through and edit, is my flow with it.
I mean, it's back to that famous, I don't know who was the person who said this quote, but it's been repeated so many times. You're just one sales letter away. Do you know who said that?
Yeah. It was originally Dan Kennedy.
Was it Dan Kennedy?
Yeah. And then Russell.
And then it's been repeated, turned into different, one funnel away, all this type of stuff.
Exactly.
But one video sales letter away. At the end of the day, like what you're talking about is so powerful, and it can change the trajectory of a business, of somebody's life, because just the ability to communicate at scale, right? Yeah. That's the power of it. It's like communicating at scale something and telling a story. We're living in a crazy time where you can take advantage of the fact that if you have a powerful message, it can resonate all over the world instantly and change the course of history, whether that's on a small level just for yourself or all the people that it's related to. It's interesting. I'm going to be interviewing the founder of CrossNet.
No way, are you really?
Oh yeah. And we played so much CrossNet. Both Andy and I played so much CrossNet at this bachelor party, and I believe you and I won the most, or it was close.
100% we did. 100%.
You won the most.
No one was even close.
And then I think I was like second, or tied for second, or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because I was doing some research, and he was talking about how they did not, like, it was not a good start for them. Like, it was hard to sell at the beginning until they were able to, like, just people watching the game is telling the story, right, of what the game is. And it's interesting to think about that from a physical product. Like, how can you create a story if it's not the same as like a digital product? What is it that people have to see to be able to come onto your side and and their interests get piqued? And it's a very fascinating study.
Yeah, it's such an interesting game to me. I think so too, because it's like just like you said, these poopery, like
Yeah.
it's such
It's essential oils in water that you spray into the toilet.
Well, and you spray it before you go to the bathroom to trap the smell. So like that's
the unique mechanism.
That's the unique mechanism with it. Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you look at, I just have such a love-hate relationship with marketing, because marketers at some level invent problems.
Yes.
You didn't know you have this problem, but then their video, if you haven't seen it, you have to go check out the video. The video on YouTube that kicked the brand off is called "Girls Don't Poop," and it's fucking hilarious. And this video has 44 million views on a video that is about, putting essential oils in the toilet so that your shit doesn't smell when you're at your boyfriend's house. Like, that's literally, or like in the office. Like, it's such a weird thing, because we didn't even know we had this insecurity until this product came about.
Yeah.
So I think this notion of like, if that type of product can make it, Jesus, like how many other products can make it with the right marketing and with the right storyline? That's the thing. Squatty Potty is another great example. It's a little tiny piece of plastic. It probably costs like 70 cents to make these things. And it's a fascinating storyline. Like, so yeah.
And it creates the problem and gives a solution right there.
Yep, exactly.
What, outside of video sales letters, which, I feel like we've covered a good amount, because it's something you've studied extensively. What are you curious about right now?
I'm going deeper into the DeFi crypto space. It's super interesting. It's really, so we're talking with I'm talking with a company right now to possibly start doing some of these types of sales letters for some stuff in the crypto space. And it's bonkers what's happening. Without getting too tangenty on all this stuff, but like, there's a product that has self-paying loans, where like if you put $100,000 into this and you borrow $50,000 away from it, like they'll pay your loan off for you. Like, it's just, and it sounds really crazy and complex, but then when you look at our financial system and realize there's been zero innovation in the past 100 years, it feels like, and all these banks have like huge old legacy bloated tech systems, really expensive salaries that they have to pay, super expensive real estate and buildings, and all of that money that is getting, that they're making off of interest, off of loaning money, goes to pay all of that stuff, and DeFi takes all of that away. It's super interesting, man. I think that whole world is just going to be nuts.
I'm also fascinated by it, and I'm like kind of starting my, you texted me some links, and I started to dive deeper, asking questions. I'm going to be doing a podcast series on it right now coming up, because I feel like it touches a bunch of the challenges that we face as a society. Like, they're solving. It's interesting because it's tech, which is always usually interesting to me. Yeah. And then it also solves a lot of the problems that we're facing, right? There's big ones, right? There's inflation, right? Which is a tangible problem that we're going to be facing. And you can see it when you go to the grocery store, or, you're in California and it's like, how much are you paying for gas?
Almost $5 a gallon.
$5 a gallon.
$4.50.
So $4.50, right? At what point will people wake up and be like, oh shit, like this is crazy? Or is it $7 a gallon? When they're like, I've never seen this before. I think we get the highest inflation numbers came out 5.4%. It's like the highest in 15 years almost.
Yeah.
So you've got that problem. You've got sovereignty. You've got all these things, and it's got all of them inside of that, and you can solve different problems. It's very interesting.
So one product I'm looking at that launches in like a week, I'm really excited by. It's called Clima. You heard of Clima?
No.
So they're putting carbon credits on the blockchain. So the carbon market is a hyper inefficient market. And it's basically a way that big companies are polluting the fucking environment and getting away with it in a legal way because they buy a bunch of carbon credits, and then that offsets the pollution that they're putting into the world. And because it's an inefficient market, the price of carbon credits are actually lower than they probably should be. So what Climate is doing is they're taking carbon credits that have a dollar amount of value to them, putting them on the blockchain, and then making it a market that anyone can invest in, which is going to drive up the price of carbon credits, which is going to make it more expensive for companies to pollute. Like, it is bonkers. This is such cool stuff, and this is such a real world application that is just really, really impressive. And this is just the beginning. We're so early. We're so early. So this stuff is very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's hard to figure out like where to start, right? I think where to start is like just getting invested in some projects, right? And putting money there, because when you put a significant amount of money to you, and it doesn't have to be like a huge percentage of your portfolio, but enough to start paying attention, it creates this desire to start following along and seeing what's happening. And then I almost feel like I start to view the world in a little bit of a different way, because there's all these projects that are focused on problems that I didn't even really see before I understood like how you could create a new system to solve problems that we thought were unsolvable.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the more interesting things, like this idea of being able to, like, artists what's one of the problems in our society? I think artists are generally massively underpaid. And same with, like, there are certain professions that just aren't valued very well in our society. Artists, teachers, healthcare workers. And we're gonna have to solve that in some way. But art is one that's very unique in this space where, you look at what NFTs are doing and the ability to create smart contracts where people are paid as their paintings or as their artwork transfers and goes from person to person, rather than just the wealthy person who buys it makes the money.
Exactly.
That's fascinating stuff. So I'm also very interested. So Climb is one that you're interested in. Anything else that what are some good resources that have helped you on your kind of DeFi journey here?
I've been talking with a couple friends that got deep into it. And they've been kind of mentoring me and showing me some of the ropes with it. Another Clima launch is coming up, and then Temple's launch is coming up too. So those are the What's two Temple? That I don't even think I can articulate it. I don't get it yet, but my friends are really, really deep into it, and the basic gist of it is they're trying to figure out a way to take away the volatility of DeFi so that you can get like stable, consistent, solid returns. I don't quite understand the tech behind it all, but it looks promising from what all of my friends are talking about.
We'll check it out. So honestly, it's just something interesting right now. I'm also on the same boat. One last question: if you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I did not?
Off the top of my head, it's like other topics that are really interesting to me. We covered relationship stuff. We covered marketing pieces, and we covered DeFi. I don't have a good answer for you.
That's good. Then it means I did a pretty good job.
It was a great interview.
Mm-hmm. Man, it's awesome to talk to you. I'm happy that you are feeling better as well.
Thank you.
You've been texting. I'm like a week ahead of you recovering from COVID. So been like getting texts. I'm checking in on you and you're like, hey, what's going to happen to me? When am I going to feel better?
Austin's he's a week ahead of me. So he's giving me the play-by-play. Here's what you need to do now. Here's what's going to happen next. And it's been pretty spot on.
Yeah, man. It's so I'm glad to see you're healthier and got that fire back. Thanks, man, for coming on the show. If somebody's I like if somebody wants to go, first of all, I'm going to recommend that anybody signs up for your newsletter because that also will incentivize you to write more.
Thank you.
But where can people go to sign up for your newsletter? Or do I need to just put a link in the show notes?
Yeah, just put a link in the show notes. Just email me, andrew@theartoflove.com. I've been off the grid for a little while, but I started writing the newsletter this year, and then I'll make it more public as we get a little farther into it. But if you email me, andrew@theartoflove.com, I'll add you on it. It's great. It's fun. It's once a week, and it's generally one simple idea, succinct, clear, to the point, and
I like it because it's varied. Sometimes you talk about something we both enjoy, like jiu-jitsu or Muay Thai, and other times it's more about relationships or about business. And so yeah, definitely sign up for that. Anything else that you think people who listen to this podcast to the completion and thought you were an interesting guy that you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, I think my favorite thing, I'm not a product person. I've really come to understand that about myself. Like I like product on the product side of things. My favorite thing is creative marketing. And so if you are a product person and you have a really interesting, unique product that solves a specific problem, hit me up and let me know, because I'm always looking for cool projects like that to work on.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude.
You have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, brother.